We've been blessed with so many legendary moments in Stranger Things, and these are my personal top 25. What's happening, Stranger Things fans? It's Ty the TV Guy, back with another video here post Season 5. Now that the show's all wrapped up, I want to be giving a lot of my all-time lists, and this is knocking one of the big ones out of the way that I've had planned at least, which is the top 25 scenes/moments in the history of the show. So this is kind of loosely defined. I did it to my own discretion. Some of the scenes are longer, some are only like 30 seconds long. It kind of just depends on what I ended up picking here. But you guys will see in a second. Before I get into these top 25, make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel for more content, and comment down below your couple favorite scenes you've ever seen from Stranger Things. There's so many to pick from, but there are a few standouts for sure. So at number 25, I may have kind of a sleeper pick here, and this is simply just when Separate Ways, the remix, is playing at the end of Season 4, Episode 8 before the finale, as Steve, Nancy, and company, the whole crew in that van that they stole, pull up to the Creel house before they start executing their plan. Of course, Max, Lucas, and Erica, for their part of the plan, get out at the Creel house. But just that Separate Ways remix is so epic, and I love the intensity that it builds up and the hypeness that it gives me as an audience member heading into the last episode. Man, I will never forget that feeling the first time I watched that scene. So yeah, that was definitely one of my favorite uses of music in the entire show. But going to number 24 now, I have Elle saving Mike from his cliff jump in Season 1. Of course, this was a little foolish, on Mike's part, jumping off a cliff just to save his friend's teeth. Who even knows if Troy the bully would have followed through with his threats. But nevertheless, Mike was trying to be a good friend, and maybe he had faith that Eleven would save him from this potentially deadly jump, from this high point at the quarry. And not only just her using the powers and the shock of her lifting him back up through the air to both us as the audience and, Dustin, Mike, and the bullies, but then how she follows it up and breaks Troy's arm and tells them to go. Dustin screams, "That's our friend, you better run, she's crazy, she'll kill you," all that type of stuff. The scene was just really good to bring the friends back together, and it was just cool visually as well. At number 23, I have the main scene from the sauna test, Season 3, Episode 4, of course, where they're actually doing the sauna test, what the episode's named after, and Billy and Eleven actually getting a pretty even battle for a while. Of course, with the context we now have from Season 4 and 5, we know that Billy was being controlled by kind of a mixture of the Mind Flayer, but especially Vecna in Season 3, and so they kind of put his powers into Billy, and so Billy had a lot of strength there, almost took out Eleven, but Eleven, of course, summoned some from deep within and was able to throw a crowbar at Billy, send him through the wall, and he kind of ran away crying. But it was good, and then she was real emotional at the end. The music for that scene was awesome. Really hard to forget that. So, yeah, really just think that was an awesome, epic kind of cultivation of finally a lot of different factors of this admittedly slow start to Season 3, in my opinion, coming together in a really epic way. At number 22, I have the sequence at the end of Holly Jolly, Season 1, Episode 3. This is where Will spells out on the lights for Joyce to run. She ends up running on that back road, and Jonathan finds her all frantic. And, of course, he's really worried about her mental state at that point. There was beautiful but kind of like tragic at the same time music playing in the background. This also simultaneously happened as the boys and Elle bike down to the quarry after the ambulance and police officers and everything to find Will's body being carried out of the water. Of course, we later find out that that's a fake, but I just thought this sequence and the song Heroes being played for the first time in the show, it really put a pit in your stomach as a viewer at the time, and our characters were really upset as well, including Hopper, Mike, and especially Joyce. At number 21, I have when Steve fights the Demodogs in the junkyard in Season 2. I believe it's Episode 6. I've always loved this sequence, both the action of it with Steve himself, fending off all these Demodogs coming from different directions. Just the fogginess in the setting, I think, is really cool as well as just a couple of the dialogue moments we get within it, with just before the actual fighting starts, Max and Lucas having a great talk on top of the bus, Max kind of apologizing to Lucas for doubting him and being rude like Billy is. She doesn't like that characteristic is popping up for her now. And then Dustin noticing them holding hands, Dustin saying Steve's awesome to the rest of the group. I just thought there were so many great moments within this, and it just has that eerie feel with the fog and the Demodogs attacking from all directions. At number 20, I have kind of a similar scene, but in season 1, not that similar, but fighting, Demogorgons, Demodogs again, where Jonathan, Nancy, and Steve are at the Byers' house, lighting the Demogorgon on fire, fighting it with the bat with nails in it, all of the above, when Steve almost runs away, but comes back heroically to save the day for Jonathan and Nancy. Everything about that scene is really cool, embodies what the show has always been, and kind of the feeling of it early on. The lights flicker when the Demogorgon gets close. There's a near-death experience for Jonathan. Somebody comes in with perfect timing to save the day. Looking back on it, so many elements that have kind of carried on throughout the show. It was just one of the OG ones, and even though the Demogorgon's graphics aren't as impressive back then, there's like a nostalgic factor, though, going back to this type of scene nowadays. So really cool, and it was really cool that we saw Steve finally have a little bit of that turning point for his character as well. At number 19, I have another season 2 scene. This generically I'm just describing as Elle returning from her mom's back to the Byers' house and saving the day. Of course, I like kind of the culmination of the scene, how it all came together, because the whole group is in the Byers' house, and since Will was able to spy based on the phone ringing back in the kitchen that he heard from the shed, the Demodogs were now on the prowl and going to that location essentially to take out our crew, since Will is the spy and sent them there. But Elle comes back just in time, throws a Demogorgon or a Demodog through the window in epic fashion, and she has a glorious return. And seeing her and Mike lock eyes, amid all the action, that was all cool, but seeing her and Mike lock eyes above all, and then her reunion with her pals right after that, Lucas and Dustin as well, and Hopper, it was just a feel-good moment combined with really important for the stakes of the show at that point, as our characters literally would have and probably could have died without her epic return. At number 18, I have Steve and Robin on Laffy Gas in the Russian base. So this is a really underrated moment in the show, I think. I wanted to include all types of moments in this top 25 list, so this is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, pure comedic moment from Stranger Things. I just think it's so funny when, especially Steve is under the intoxication of that Laffy Gas, when the doctors are trying to get him to spill about how he found out about the lair and how they knew all these secret Russian secrets, how they cracked the code, all that type of stuff. But Steve is basically just crap talking the doctors and the general, like, oh, you're never going to find them. And Hopper's calling the U.S. cavalry. And, he's like, my little curly-haired friend Dustin, he's going to come in here. And him and Hopper, guns a-blazing. It's hard to describe for me because I'm not saying it like as funny as he was. But if you know that scene, you know what I'm talking about. I would hope it's super, super funny. If not, give it a rewatch. I absolutely love that comedic moment there. He should be so scared and concerned, but tying in the Laffy Gas to it was brilliant because it kind of made him uninhibited and just saying whatever he was truly feeling, and what he was truly feeling was hilarious. At number 17, I kind of grouped in the whole sequence with the fight at the end of season 4. So that includes 11 versus Vecna in his red mind type world. That includes Hopper slaying the final Demogorgon at the Russian prison, and Nancy shooting the physical body of Vecna up in the attic of the upside down Creel house, along with Steve and Robin by her side. All of those events were occurring simultaneously, flashing back and forth. So I think it all counts as the same sequence, moment, scene, you know what I'm saying? And not too much explanation to go into this one. It was just really awesome. Felt like a super good climax to all the events of this season, and what I hoped would be a great setup for, the action of season 5, even though it ended up going a little different direction than we thought. But nevertheless, this was the ultimate banger ending to the action of season 4, I thought. Nancy walk him down Wheeler. What else would you want her doing but staring Vecna in the face with a shotgun? Hopper, legendary as always, and Elle finally got the power after the I love you speech to break free of the vines and give him one final blow. At number 16, I have Eddie's guitar solo. Yes, Eddie, one of our fallen soldiers throughout the seasons, was obviously a super charismatic, awesome character, and one thing we know about him is he loved rock and roll, he loved rocking out, he loved Dustin, he loved that guitar, and he went to town with it right next to his best buddy in the Upside Down, what could be more spectacular than that? Let's be real. At number 15, I have another Robin-Steve scene here, and it's when Robin comes out to Steve in the bathroom at the Starcourt Mall. I think this, by a lot of the fan base, may be a little forgotten, a little underrated, but I think this is one of my favorite interpersonal moments in the show, meaning just like, nothing too grand happening, not involving the monsters or some crazy action, just two characters having a conversation. I think it's some of the most high quality writing that we see in that type of scenario throughout the entire show. It was perfectly, they came to that point perfectly. I loved the performance and the acting from Maya Hawke and Joe Keery and how they played off each other in the scene. Even the camera work with, the above view of Steve sliding under the stall. Every detail was on point with this scene, including the delivery of the lines, the writing of it, making it feel real from Robin and Steve's perspective, because he was falling for her, and then it was tough for him to swallow for a second, like, oh, wow. But then Steve, the goat that he's turned into by this point in the show, is very receptive to it, even given the time period. And Robin, even though it's probably the most unlikely person that she would have originally thought she'd be, would be the first she really comes out to, he ended up being so nice and caring about it. It just made you fall in love with the characters even more. It was an awesome scene. At number 14, I have 11 flipping the van, another legendary moment in this show. How could you forget it? Brenner and the rest of the Hawkins Lab gang are on the heels, hot and heavy, of our little kid main characters, and 11 had to pull out the powers full stop to make sure their pursuit would come up short, at least in this instant. And this was also a turning point in an underrated way for a character dynamic in the show between Elle and Lucas. If you remember early on, Lucas was the most mistrustful of 11, really just wanted to focus on finding Will, not really caring for and paying attention to too much this new character that was kind of strange and he just didn't really vibe with. But he realized at this point that, this means she's on our team. She did something spectacular to save their lives, and she wouldn't have done that unless it was true love and respect both ways. So that really turned the table with that situation as well. At number 13, I have the never-ending story song in the finale episode of Season 3. One of many great moments in this episode, and honestly, really close to bumping it up even to the top 10. It's just such a sweet, wholesome moment. Once again, amid such hectic times and chaos, Hopper is even rolling his eyes as it's occurring because he's like, the world is about to end and I'm listening to two little kids sing this fairy tale song. So it was just, once again, greatly executed, I thought, by the Duffer Brothers and by the performers, of course. We all know Gaten Matarazzo at this point can sing. And, he was acting like, he's all shy about it. But he could actually, he has some pipes. He can sing. So it was just a sweet moment between one of our favorite sweet characters, Dustin, and his new girlfriend, who, by the way, at this point, we didn't really have any proof she existed before this moment. So that was also part of the shock element to this, aside from it just being a bit ridiculous in concept. But it really worked out. It really paid off. It's hard to bring giggles in a moment that feels so weighty like it did at that point in Season 3 when lives were on the line, but they managed to do it, I think, in a really tasteful and fun way. At number 12, I gave myself a pretty long leash here because this scene lasts, 10, 15 minutes probably at the end of Season 2, but I put the entire snowball dance. Of course, my favorite moment of this personally is that 11 and Mike get reunited. Hopper allows 11 to come out for, one night out on the town. Might be a little dangerous exposing her, shortly after the recent events. But, he asked Dr. Owens, what's the risk of one night? And we found out what was so important about one night. It was giving Elle that chance to have her moment with Mike at the dance. And, they had a sweet dance. They kissed, all that type of stuff. Max and Lucas also had their first kiss. So a lot of good relationship moments for the kids. Dustin didn't have as much luck with the ladies, but Nancy came over to comfort him in another adorable moment. Really gained a lot of respect, of course, for Nancy in that scene as well. And then even Will got asked to dance at the time. Was with a girl at the time. We know now that he probably wasn't too into that necessarily, but might have still been figuring things out. So nevertheless, he still got a decent ending to his night as well. And also leading up to it, Steve kind of hyping up Dustin going in. Oh, just such a great wrap up on a high note. It's a little happier note than we had in the previous 2 episodes, largely in season 2 near the end. At number 11, once again, I'm a sucker for these interpersonal, deep cut conversation moments. And this one is between Elle and Hopper in the car, in Hopper's, police car on the way to Hawkins' lab in season 2, episode 9, right? Early in that episode, they're heading to the lab so 11 can close the gate. And there's kind of some silence between them. A little awkward at first because Hopper's like, well, I want to ask her about why her hair's all slicked back and she has black eyeliner on, but I don't want her to be mad. I know I did some things wrong. And so they have a real good heart-to-heart conversation. Hopper, which I think is the best bag for him to get in when he does in this show. He gets super vulnerable, and the performance is just great from David Harbour and Millie Bobby Brown in this scene. They both kill it with this dialogue and with these emotions. They expand a little bit on Hopper's feelings on his daughter, though he's coming at it from, a place of vulnerability. He also shows maturity and being real with Eleven and talking about, the loss of her candidly. And I just love moments like this that feel so grounded amid all the chaos, kind of like I said earlier. At number 10 here, I think I might have my first season 5 moment that I've covered this entire time, but it won't be the last, I'll tell you that. So I don't think season 5 was perfect, but I do think it had a few really high highs, and they made this top 10 here, as you can see now. At 10, I have Elle sacrificing herself and, the goodbye with Mike and Purple Rain playing, that whole scene. I really loved it. I don't care what anyone online says. Yeah, you can argue there's a little bit of awkwardness with Finn's performance in it, but I was largely moved by his performance. Once again, don't care what anyone has to say. I really liked it. Made me tear up, even cry, a little bit beyond tearing up, I would say. I thought the Purple Rain was just the perfect song to play for this situation. I loved the emotion poured out from Millie Bobby Brown, especially in this scene, and then as he kind of snapped out of being in her mind, Finn as Mike's screams for 11, I thought were really authentic and raw and gut-wrenching. So I loved this scene. I think it was a really good send-off for 11. I'm actually a fan of the way they ended her character. I wish they would have maybe killed off one other main character to make the stakes feel more real, but that's not the topic of this video. For this scene and how it ended her character specifically, I thought it tied a nice bow on it. The only thing you can argue against the scene is that, they didn't necessarily build up their relationship great this season. They hardly spent any time together, and then they just get a random moment here at the end. But maybe that was intentional. Maybe it was, they didn't have enough time together here at the end. And so we're going to give them a whole dedicated scene to say goodbye in Elle's mind, essentially. And, it was heartbreaking to me. I absolutely loved it. I was waiting to see what this song was that the Duffer Brothers hyped up that was never used before in a different show or movie, and we finally got it, and I loved the timing of it. At number 9, I have Dustin and Steve's first conversation on the train tracks in season 2 as they're trying to hunt down the Demogorgons, essentially. I believe this is early in episode 6 of season 2, might be late episode 5, not exactly sure, but I think you all know the scene I'm talking about. This is when they officially start the journey as what I think is the best duo in this show. It's like their introductory scene as, they're talking back and forth to each other. They kind of start talking about girls and, Dustin's like, oh, so that's when you kiss her? And then Steve's like, whoa, slow down, Tiger. You can't be jumping at the gun so much. You got to be calculated. Some girls, you got to be stealthy like a ninja. He shares his hair secrets with Dustin. You get to see a different side of Steve Harrington, honestly, that we hadn't seen much in this show. And him taking on more of this big brother role to Dustin especially, but soon after all these other kids and protecting them really gets him into his most likable zone as a character and creates kind of propels, I should say, him into one of the best character arcs, not only in this show, but I think in television. So, great scene to kick all that off. A different kind of section of his character arc, his relationship with Dustin, and just some really good dialogue. Once again, the Duffer Brothers writing was on point early on in the show, especially. At number 8, I have another season 5 moment, and it's when Will overtakes Henry / Vecna in the Shock Jock episode Season 5, Episode 5. I think this moment is wildly underrated. I hear people talk about it as if it was pretty good, it was solid. What? I mean, while I was watching this first time through, guys, no joke, I was blown away. I was flabbergasted. I was maybe the most hype I've ever been at any moment in this show. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous, bonkers. Couldn't believe my eyes. Will literally overtook Vecna in that moment, saved Max's life, loosened the grip on her neck, let her go. She's seemingly able to escape with Holly, at least for the moment, and then the slow turn of Vecna's head toward her, and Will saying, "Max, if you can hear me, you have to run, run." Oh my gosh, guys. I thought that was perfect. No notes, no edits. Absolutely great. Even how the scene started with Vecna, starting out as like Mr. What's-It in one and then turning into Vecna as he comes around the corner. Really sinister music. Some of my, one of my favorite music choices for how they did the score up in this scene. It was absolutely perfect once again, I think. Just everything about this scene, I thought 10 out of 10. And then, closing out the scene with the intense battle mentally back and forth. Henry telling Will to get out of his mind. Oh, man. This season was on such a good track at this point. This is where I was like, okay, we might get some peak moving forward here. That moment was peak, so I got to give it due credit. At number 7, I have Elle closing the gate. I still stand by and think that despite how far the special effects have come and CGI, not only because the budget of the show has just been bigger in recent years, of course, as the show's become more lucrative and bigger in popularity and Netflix pours more money into it now, but also just compared to when they made season 2 back in, 2016, 2017, obviously technology's just gotten better. And so, yes, they have more capability with special effects and all these visuals nowadays. I still think, despite all of that and the advancements in technology, I still think this is maybe the most visually appealing scene in the history of the show. I absolutely love how it looks. I think it's beautiful. Obviously, beautiful is a relative term. She's closing a gate to an evil dimension, but given the scenario, I think it's beautiful. The orange and yellow colors as she closes the gate. She starts to levitate. Hopper is shocked by the power he sees in his adopted daughter here. He's fighting off demo dogs that are climbing up the walls in the background. We see the mind flare about to poke its head through. Obviously, just what it does for the conclusion of the season as well. It's a super significant moment. All those factors coming together just makes me love this scene. I also love how Elle kind of uses some of the motivation she learned from her trip over to in the Lost Sister episode. I know, hold your booze. We don't like that episode largely as a fan base, but I still just like how they brought that emotion into the scene for her. All in all, 10 out of 10 scene once again. And number 6, this is where I have another season 5 moment, which is Will unlocking his powers in Sorcerer, season 5, episode 4, and he becomes the Sorcerer, essentially, siphoning the powers from Vecna in the hive mind to kill 3 Demogorgons at once that were attacking his friends, Mike, Lucas, and Robin, simultaneously. I thought the physical acting from Noah Schnapp in this scene was really cool. I loved the dramatic nature of it, kind of waiting till the last second in classic Stranger Things fashion, have to make us bite our nails to the very last moment. I loved kind of the screeching noise that they made the Demogorgons have as they were being held back by Will. I loved how the camera slowly panned from Mike past the Demogorgon over to him. The music was just more legendary synth music from the composers of this show that really made me feel like I was floating in this moment and just rooting on what really became a true superhero in Will as the Sorcerer. So all elements of it, once again, the camera work, the music, the acting, the stakes and the build-up of the scene, how they interwove Robin's motivational speech to him and how it kind of affected him personally, but also summoned this power from within and gave him this capability in a way, thinking back to, what's most important in finding himself. Gosh, it was so well written. It was so well carried out as well. And Will save the day. You just had to love it. You had to love it. At number 5, I have the Vecna /Henry/1 reveal in Season 4, Episode 7, The Massacre at Hawkins Lab. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is the highest rated episode on IMDb at 9.6 out of 10 stars last time I checked, and for good reason. It's in large part due to this scene and how great the acting is between Jamie Campbell Bower, how menacing and just evil, pure evil he feels in this scene when talking to young Eleven and Millie Bobby Brown, and then they have their fight, in these flashbacks at Hawkins Lab. Elle finally gets to see what actually happened, which was her sending him to Dimension X in an epic display of powers as a young child there for Eleven. But just this reveal in general, though, to me was probably the best twist we ever got in Stranger Things. Some of it was predictable from the start. To me, I could see maybe a little bit before it happened that Vecna was going to be one. I never saw the Henry Creel tie-in coming, so I loved that. And it built up, to me, what was the most interesting and obviously the most explored villain of the show with human background and motivation. Oh, it was such good storytelling. Such good storytelling coming to such a satisfying point right here. And it brought out everything. I mean, he really got deep into his philosophy about the world and how, this world is broken and you got to join me. It was just classic good versus evil, but done in a unique and surprising way for us viewers, bringing all three of those characters in to be the same person. At number 4, I had to go with the classic here. Not as flashy as some of these other ones maybe, but I have Hopper and Joyce saving Will at the end of Season 1. Man, the scene, I think over time, and probably this last episode, has become underrated, I should say, this final episode of Season 1. Hopper and Joyce saving Will in that scene. We got to remember, yes, on surface level, it's just really great after all the efforts our characters have made that they're finally able to find and bring him home, as Joyce had been pleading the others around her to help her do. Hopper helps in that quest. It's super satisfying. You can tell him and Joyce, have a bit of a connection, and he didn't want to see her go through what he went through in losing his daughter. And to make it even better, they parallel the moment of him resuscitating Will with the attempts of the doctors to resuscitate his daughter who had fallen to leukemia. And it just brought out all the emotions in him, in us audience members. So once again, just an example of perfect writing, in my opinion, early on in this show. And those moments that just come together narratively perfectly. So great work there all around. David Harbour knocked it out of the park this first season, along with Winona, but he kind of stole the show, in my opinion, in this final scene, because he was doing a lot of the heavy lifting and had a lot of the emotional tie-in with his daughter as well in that moment. So, wow. At number 3, I have Max's death scene, which we now know to be her basically fake death scene where she slipped into kind of a coma and actually died in the moment, but then Eleven ends up resuscitating her, with her powers. You can have your opinions about the Eleven resuscitating her part. You can think that Max should have stayed dead because it just makes more sense, or, it would have made the moment feel more real in the end. Whatever you want to say. For me, her being brought back to life still doesn't take away anything really from this moment. I still just think this was one of the most devastating moments to watch live in the show. I saw her fall and crash, and as Lucas held her in his arms, it probably got me crying more than any other moment in this entire show, because I think this is potentially the most beautiful relationship in the show. So much care and love coming from both sides. You can tell that even when they were going through their rough patch early on in the season, Lucas was the one who really tried to see her, really tried to look past the curtain she was putting up between them, essentially. And so I just thought how he fought for her, but then it still wasn't enough in the end, because she kind of had to be a sacrifice within this plan, was just so devastating. And then, of course, we just have to point out and applaud the incredible dramatic performance by Sadie Sink, and especially Kayla MacLachlan in this scene. It was peak acting in the show, not gonna lie. I mean, it maybe trumps anything else I've seen anywhere in the show. It might be my favorite acted scene. Also, one last note, not to mention that Max is also telling Lucas finally that she's not ready to die after the journey she's gone through this season, and maybe doubting at points how much she wants to be alive and fight for being there for her friends. Now she's finally able to say that in this moment when death is so close and has its grip on her. thought that was powerful as well. At number 2, I have the moment that has made me cry just as much, if not maybe slightly less, but the second most in the show, which is Hopper's letter. I will always love this moment because, one, it just, made me feel all the emotions, made me cry. But also, I just think everything Hopper says in this is such facts and so true and so applicable to everyone's life probably, and how change is difficult to deal with. The delivery of the lines from David Harbour with some cracks in his voice when he says, we would watch the show until we doze off. Oh, man. I'm telling you, some of these performances, especially pre-season 5 in this show, are so underrated and were just such peak television. And David didn't even really have to be on the screen much as Hopper in this scene to really steal the show. And then we just get kind of, his letter combining with them all leaving town. It just had all of the emotions swirling between our characters and, giving a powerful, important message to us as the audience too. So it was just a masterfully put together scene, I think, and a send-off that really made me wonder what the next steps for Stranger Things were going into season 4, and it was safe to say I'd be thoroughly impressed. But then at number 1, far and away my favorite Stranger Things scene ever. To me, one of the best scenes in television. You can say it's overrated. You can say it's now overplayed as a song. You can say they went back to it, that song, too many times in season 5. Whatever complaint you want to have about this, I don't care. Running Up That Hill is the best scene in the history of Stranger Things. It's undeniable. It's inevitable. This scene does it all. Brings you to a climax in a mid-season moment at a point where you don't necessarily expect something this high stakes to happen, and something with potentially as dire of consequences as this could have to happen. You see one of our main characters finally come face to face with Vecna. Of course, we've already seen the wrath of Vecna through, what he's done to other characters like Fred and Chrissy early on in the season, but now you see him tormenting Max. But yeah, it just progresses so well. Max finally chooses to run toward the light, toward her friends, fight back against this depression and this hole she's in currently, essentially. And like I said, fight to get toward that light and reach the people she loves and cares about most again. And she ultimately does. She falls into their arms. I love the music and how it fades out from this scene. You can tell that Vecna's real pissed off as well that Max is able to get away. It just did an exquisite job of bringing the evil monsters plan, combining that with, so far this season, the most interesting storyline for an individual character, pushing the plot forward, making the rest of the group aware of some of the biggest challenges, also having a lot of classic Stranger Things elements like the importance of music, and Robin and Nancy helping so much in the plan to help save Max from a different location. Everything about it was just peak entertainment, and it just made me love Max like no other. So I think that's the best moment in the history of Stranger Things. I'd love to do a deeper dive on that, but this is already a long video, so I'm going to end it here. But let me know what your favorite moment in the history of the show is. If you think I left anything really significant off this list, I didn't spend like a week putting this together, so I could have missed something here or there, guys. But all in all, I do think these are some of my favorite and really widely just some of the most loved and impressive feats the Duffer Brothers and everyone who put their heart and soul into this, really achieved. So, yeah, loved it. Let me know what you guys think. Subscribe to the channel if you made it this far. You're a champ. Peace out.